Does a stellar from another dimension or another star system wear a watch? Because watches are very prevalent on the Earth. But does a being from another planet use a watch? More specifically, if we look at Earth, and if we look in the animal world, if we ask the same question, for example, does a giraffe wear a watch? Does an eagle wear a watch? Does a dolphin wear a watch? So I'm not trying to be silly, but the human wears this instrument of decoding time, and this instrument is fairly new. And what if our watch wasn't working properly? You know, on my watch I have several dials. There's a date, there's a day of the week, there's a 24-hour, there's a 12-hour. Some watches have a stopwatch, some watches have a 60-second dial. What if one of these dials was off, wasn't working properly? Many watches don't work properly. The idea of a watch itself is derived from the older devices that were connected to the planets, and they were called astrolabes or astrolabe, but they were literally looked like a watch, but instead it had all of the major planets. So we lived according to the cycle of the planets. My watch uses a 12-hour dial divided into 2 periods, 24 hours. So I want to talk today about time distortion and the true year we are in, because I don't think, according to my calculations, I don't think we are in the year 2011. It's not my opinion, it's not my belief, nobody told me. I have calculated it. I have determined that we are not in 2011. I have written extensively about this. I have briefly discussed this in other videos. It's not a new concept, but it's becoming more important, so I want to keep discussing it. Time, as you can see, I have a watch. Many people have a watch, or they have a mobile phone, or they have a clock. We tell time, but time is artificially decoded, right? The giraffe doesn't have a watch, but it knows when to wake up, it knows when to go to sleep, because the giraffe is connected to the reality. The reality is connected to the other planets, the greater reality, and those planets are connected to the cosmos. So we are all cosmically timed.
Me too!
But the human being uses a watch. And we assume that other interstellar races have their own way of telling time. Or they internally know time, just like the giraffe, just like the insects. They don't use watches, and they don't have a problem. The dolphin doesn't use a watch, and is never late for dinner. But what happens is, when I realize that the human being although we are living in the year 2011, in the actual cosmic year of progression is not 2011. It was a profound discovery, I think. And it raised a lot of eyebrows, and most people don't understand it. And I'm going to try to explain it here, because it's important that we are living in the year 2011. But I know that we are a technologically based society. We live in a manufactured reality that appears to be real, but it's actually a synthetic reality. It's so advanced that we cannot see through the technology, right? If we created a big enough spotlight of plasma energy, we could create a sun. Obviously, we don't have the technology, but somebody does. So, if we expand our mind enough, the sun can be interpreted as a technology, as a big spotlight that can sustain life. So we live in this manufactured reality, but we all are decoding time. We ourselves are like watches. We are decoding the movements of the cosmos. If our decoding mechanisms were damaged or were offset, we would fall out of sync with the cosmos. We would fall out of sync with other planetary systems, other galaxies. But within our own spatial realm, within our own world, all would appear normal. Or would it? You see, if we were truly out of sync with the cosmos, and we were in sync with some retarded time frame, right? There would be signs. If my watch reads 12:05 and his watch reads 12:09, but the atomic clock reads 12:15, the atomic clock should be more correct. That means at 12:05 and 12:15, I'm 10 minutes out of sync with reality. There would be a sign. The first physical sign is I'm late for dinner. I'm late for my appointments. I'm late for my meetings. And over a period of time, if I'm late for the meeting starts late. If I'm late for dinner, the food is cold. So there is this ripple effect. Just because my watch is wrong. Imagine that society's internal decoding mechanisms of time were damaged or were offset or weren't working properly. You know, one of my dials is a day of the week, and one of my dials is the date. Let's say the day of the week is correct, but the date is wrong. Right? Let's say my second hand is too fast. You know, it could be any of these combinations. It doesn't have to be the whole watch is broken. But if one of my dials isn't working properly, and then that person's dials isn't working properly, and that person's dials isn't working properly, all of a sudden we are completely out of sync with the cosmos. And there will be signs of this, what I call time distortion. Time distortion is the difference between the cosmic time and the time in this reality. And there will be a distortion effect. But unless you're paying attention, you won't be able to see it. We won't be able to notice what it is. So some examples I've identified are these. Some are obvious. I've discussed the idea of war. See, an old idea. War is an old idea that we can't seem to erase. We can't seem to step out of. It's like the decoding of time regarding war and murder, mass murder and violence, survival. We live in a world of plenty. Why are we still feel like we have to survive? You see? So maybe that mechanism is damaged. We still use gasoline engines. The internal combustion engine on your car, unless you have a hybrid, which is only recently, the internal combustion engine is 100-year-old technology. If you look at the computer, we started with these vacuum tubes and a mainframe computer the size of an office, a floor on an office building. Then the vacuum tubes became these small transistors, and they shrank down the office mainframe into smaller computers. Then the personal computer came about when those transistors were miniaturized onto a chip. So they can put 1 million transistors on a tiny chip. They can put millions of transistors on my fingertip. Remember that the vacuum tubes were very large, and if you had 1 million of these, the room was very big. So you see this progress in the computer technology. You have a mainframe, you have a desktop, you have a laptop. Now we have palm tops. We have palm top computers with multi-core processors. The automobile engine is the same automobile engine. You have a 4-cylinder, you have a 6-cylinder, you have an 8-cylinder, you have a 10-cylinder, you have horsepower. See, there's no progress. We're still using tires. We're still using wheels. If you look at some of the videos or films of the 60s, people were inventing cars that could hover over the ground. Anti-gravity cars, flying cars. 50 years later, there's no flying car. There's no levitating vehicle. We still got wheels. We have rubber. We're still using rubber tires on concrete. We still have, in our homes, we have conventional ovens, which is an insulated chamber that we heat up to cook food from many directions. Usually from up and down, but the air circulates. The heat cooks the food from all sides. The Neanderthals were using ovens. They were digging pits in their caves, and they were using, the more advanced cultures were using ceramic ovens. The ancient Greeks were using ovens to bake bread. So thousands of years later, we go in the kitchen and we have an oven. The modern oven is probably less than 200 years old, the ones we have now. Then about 40 years ago, 45 years ago, the microwave oven came about. Many of us have a microwave oven. See, the microwave oven now is an advanced technology using microwave energy in a chamber to cook food rather than using gas or electricity or firewood in a conventional oven. So there's a distortion here. You know, how do we still have gasoline, but we're not using electrical energy? We're not using another form of energy to power our cars. My camera uses, stored energy in a battery. But why wasn't it developed into the car? Why isn't our car levitating by now? Some of it you can say is because of the industry and the corporations. But I think it has to do with the interference on our time decoding. That we accept, sun's gone. We accept this frequency of time. We accept the internal combustion engine because we're not aware that it's out of sync with the proper mechanism. We're looking at our watch and it says Wednesday, and now we've adjusted to it, but it's actually Friday, right? They're using internal combustion engines, but they should be using free energy systems. But we're so used to it, our mechanisms are so damaged, we don't notice it. If you have a broken watch and you never fix it, you get used to it. You're always late. You always have the wrong thing, but you get used to it. You don't mind, and we forget. And I think we've forgotten this, the fact that we are out of sync with the cosmos because we're not living a harmonious life. We still have survival issues in a world of plenty enough for everybody. We still need to murder people and war. We're still using certain forms of government. We're still using monetary systems. You know, we have countries that have 30 or 40% obesity rates, and we have countries that are starving. So there's enough food, right? The fact that, my point is that there's a lot of interference, but the evidence of this stuff relates to time distortion. I've often said that we are in the 23rd century, that we've been regressed, according to my calculation, 200 years since the time of Jesus is when I looked at it. So at year 0, let's say, over till now, it's about 2,000 years. When I examined the world events, and then I used a lot of intuition to calculate exactly how much we were off. And then I looked at the distortion in today, and I tried to create a rough figure. Because in a reality system, you know, whenever you have a negative event, it creates a noise. And that noise affects the progression of time. We can relate to this with music. If some guy's playing a Mozart sonata, and it sounds very beautiful, and the guy down the street grabs his big truck and screeches his tires, and we've all heard screeching tires, so that drowns out the musical sonata. Mozart is now full of noise for that period of time. So if we look through history, we have a lot of these screeching tires. A negative event, a catastrophe, an invasion, a war, a black plague, the Crusades, the Inquisition, anything that severely impacts reality and the thought process of the world. Now, there are artificial earthquakes, there are changes in the weather patterns, there are terrorist attacks which are staged. All of this stuff impacts the reality, and all that noise, all that screeching tires changes how we decode time, so that we're not decoding no longer the cosmic time. We have a damaged sense of time. We're out of sync. So I estimated that we have lost about 10% of our time. In other words, we are 10% out of sync with reality. Or 200 years, right? Over 2,000 years, we've been regressed 10%. That's where I came up with the figure 200 years, and I've written about this. So we should have been, this was in 2009. So in 2009, we should have been in the year 2209. But we were still in 2009. Then in 2007, as I've discussed, some of you might know, in 2007 a new reality system began to enter this field, to unspool in this reality an entirely new system. I call this reality 6 because we were living in the 5th version of reality, and the new one in 2007 was the 6th reality. So the 6th reality was unspooling. In 2009, I estimated we were 200 years off. I thought that the new reality system, reality 6, what I called Dakala, I thought that was the new reality. But I was wrong. It was actually a transitional reality. It was a transitional system to help us get back to the cosmic progression of time, because we were out of sync. What happened was in 2000, from 2009 to 2010, we jumped 7 years. We skipped over 2012 and everything associated with 2012. This is another reason why I said there is no 2012, because we went from 2009 and we went to 2016 cosmically, but physically we didn't see that because we're attached to our time frame. So by the end of 2010 we went 7 years. So it was actually in 2010, at the end of 2010, we were actually in the year 2017. I've discussed this before. Of course, not many people listen. So we were in 2017. I estimated from the last 2,000 years we were 200 years off. So my calculation was that we should have been in the year 2217. This is in 2010. So on March 21st, last week, was a new year. So it's 2218. But our calendar says 2011. So now there's 3 levels. I think that our true cosmic time frame is 2218. I think that on a mid-level, if we add 7 years to 2011, it's 2018. So as a mid-level understanding. Because my 200 years comes from the past. So that's a deeper, let's say that's a deeper calculation. So we're in 2011, but the last few years we jumped 7 years. We've jumped over 2012. We've jumped past my original transitional period from 2007 to 2015. We went to 2017, now it's March 21st, we're in 2018. So I think at minimum we're in 2018, but if I calculate over the last 2,000 years, there's 200 years. So we should be in 2218. That's our goal, I think. Our immediate challenge is to get to 2018, which is probably impossible. Our ultimate challenge is to get to 2218, and as the years progress, to add to that. So let me kind of highlight another aspect of this. Otherwise, it's going to get too long. We're all familiar with the TV series Star Trek. Star Trek was in the late 60s, created by Gene Roddenberry. Starred Captain Kirk, Spock, and Dr. the Bones, right? Leonard Nimoy, William Shatner, and the character who played Dr. Bones. Now, Captain Kirk used a communicator. The communicator was a flip-top communicator, right? It was a flip top. It's very clear. At the time it came out, it was so advanced nobody could understand it. So the flip communicator, which he called the ship, he can call a ship with a communicator. That communicator in Star Trek is based in the time frame of the Star Trek series. Many of you know that. The series was based in the 23rd century. Sometime in the 23rd century. Now in the late 90s, probably 1996, around that time, Motorola created a phone called the StarTAC. StarTAC was a flip phone, a very slender, small device, and it was very popular. It was the leading edge phone at the time. The StarTAC phone, I think, is equivalent to the Star Trek communicator. That was 1996, 1997. So what Motorola created in the late 90s was a 23rd century equivalent. You know, that's a little bit of a proof. It's not 100% proof, but that gives you some indication. We've been able to create a technology equivalent to a fictional world based in the 23rd century. Fictional worlds have some truth in them. Gene Roddenberry didn't create stuff from the dirt. He had some kind of cosmic inspiration. If we think that his communicator has some accuracy, some relevance to other interstellar cultures, and if Motorola could create the phone in the late 90s, it gives us some indication that we're now in the year 2011. We've surpassed Captain Kirk. We now have iPhones. These are touchscreen, handheld devices, multi-core processors. They have cameras. They have a camera in the front and they have a camera in the back. Even Captain Kirk didn't have a camera on his phone. He was from the 23rd century. So, in a way, we've surpassed the technology of Star Trek. If Star Trek is in the 23rd century, that's a little bit more support for my claim, my discovery, that we are in the 23rd century, 2218. We have nanotechnology, we have computer software, we have handheld computers, we have microchips, we have supersonic jets, we have an abundance of food, we know how to grow food, but we have war, we have dictatorship, we have corruption, we have gasoline engines, we're still using fossil fuels, we still hate each other.
You know you're cool, eh?
So we have all these distorted, distorted effects. So I think that the way to improve ourselves, the way to step out of this prison, because I think that the result we're in now, this retarded, regressed time frame, was done on purpose. It's not an accident. Part of it is because we lost touch with the cosmos and we weren't doing the things necessary to maintain our reality. You know, in the old days there were druids, and the druids would maintain a connection to the other dimensions. The other dimensions were connected to the other cosmic realities. Today we don't believe in stuff like that. Today we believe in logic, in scientific proof, and our world is in trouble. So we lost contact. By the same token, I'm aware there are other beings here who have created and orchestrated negative events and catastrophes. The earthquake in Haiti was an artificial event, and we will come to see that later on. The terrorist attacks, I think it's very obvious that 9/11 was not orchestrated by a bunch of men in caves. The Inquisition of 1,000 years ago, this was an orchestration. If you go through history, the assassinations, the catastrophes, the negative events created this negative fractal impression that damaged our musical sonata. So we weren't decoding time properly. Now we're not decoding time properly and we're falling out of sync. We're not connected to the cosmos. So the more we reintegrate and synchronize with the cosmos, because the cosmos has a true time, we don't. The more we synchronize with the cosmos, the more this war and this gasoline will fade away, and we will be able to use our social networks and our advanced software and our abundance of food to feed everybody. There's more than enough food to feed everybody on the planet if we're connected to the cosmos. If we live in a distorted world, we are in trouble. So I think we have to find a way to reintegrate with the proper fractal time. Perhaps 2218 is too big of a number, but 2018 is more accurate than 2011. So in my view, according to my calculations, we've jumped over 2012. We've jumped over my original transition of 2007 to 2015. We entered 2016, now we're into 2018. So now we're into a new path with a new outcome. But those stuck in the old reality, in the old damaged time frame, will continue to think in that manner. So we have to think more advanced. We have to come to realize we are actually a 23rd century civilization imprisoned in a 21st century mindset. That's our imprisonment. We're time slaves. Something to think about.